predecessor. You know, if Putin wanted his dream week with Donald Trump would say, I'm going to keep reducing military spending like Barack Obama did. He'd say, I'm going to go back into the Iranian deal the way Barack Obama did. Instead, we have President Trump, who by his actions has armed Ukraine, has sent arms to Georgia, has significantly increased our military spending after, in real terms, a 17 or 18% drop. So I think as far as what he does, Donald Trump has done a good job. Now, the fact that he met with Putin, I think is a good thing. Okay, I mean, my goodness, in the past we've had American presidents meet with Mao Zedong. They met with Joseph Stalin. So meeting with Vladimir Putin.
But what he said immediately after that meeting?
Well, I think, like I said, when you're dealing with Donald Trump, I think you've got to kind of look at the whole thing that he says over a period of time.
You're not concerned?
No, I'm not concerned. I mean, we know that Donald Trump sometimes shoots from the hip a little bit, but I think if you look at his overall policy towards Russia, it's positive. And I'll say this, too. If you don't want to send American forces into Syria, and you feel we have a moral obligation to look at the Kurds or some of our friends or Israel, I think you want to be, to a certain extent, talking to Russia. So I'm glad he's there.
You know, one of the things he talked about during the Helsinki summit was what he called, again, the witch hunt, the Mueller investigation. I'd like to get your take on that, where we are at this moment. Do you think it's a witch hunt? And would you support, as some in the House, some of your colleagues, they'd like to see Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General who's overseeing this investigation, they'd like to see him impeached. Would you support that?
Impeachment is a strong term. I think the investigation's gone on long enough. That's my own.
You think it should end?
Yeah, I think we've gone along long enough. We haven't really found anything. I think there are a lot of people in Washington, including the Washington bureaucracy, as we saw in the hearings over the FBI, who just don't like Donald Trump. So the whole bureaucracy, including the FBI, including the CIA, you're made up of people who, and there are people like that in Wisconsin too, who kind of really dislike Donald Trump. And I think you have to be mindful of that whenever any investigation is going on.
So if there were a vote on impeachment of Rod Rosenstein, would you support that?
To be honest, you're the first person to ever ask me that question.
Okay.
I'd have to think about it.
Okay. Let's talk about another big issue in the news today, tariffs. So the president has taken this path. He says we've been taken advantage of too long. And so he's trying to change the paradigm, as we might say. How do you feel about that? Your colleague, Ron Johnson, the senator from the state, says permanent damage is being done to Wisconsin businesses. What are you hearing in your district?
There is concern both in the agriculture community and the manufacturing community. And when you impose a tariff on a raw material like steel, aluminum, obviously it affects manufacturing. There are contracts or long-term trade practices that are being affected here. Obviously, I think the Trump people themselves knew there'd be some short-term problems. I believe they felt things would be wrapped up by this time. I've been present for conversations, which are probably private conversations, with both Larry Kudlow and Commerce Secretary Ross. And I think at least Larry Kudlow would have told you that by now this would be over. We're beginning to make progress with South Korea, with Australia, with some countries. And I guess we'll see the way it looks in a month. I've made it clear to the Trump administration, though, the concerns I have, how it's affecting agriculture and how it's affecting manufacturing.
Besides communicating what you're hearing to the president's team, is there anything else Congress can do?
Well, I suppose we could try to pass a law re-exerting our authority over these tariffs. I would be surprised if that happened in the next 5 or 6 weeks.
Spend a couple of moments on immigration. And the president has tried to take a tougher stance on immigration in this country. You've been fairly outspoken about immigration, your concerns about illegal immigration. Is the president doing the right thing, in your opinion?
I think it's good to have a president who's taking immigration seriously. I think he's stiffened up the qualifications for asylum, which is a good thing. Unlike some people, I do think we need perhaps more immigrants in this country. But every immigrant ought to be a good immigrant. And for too long, to a certain extent, an immigrant is somebody who's going to work hard, not break the law, and kind of think about the role of government the way Americans should think about the role of government. And that'd be a good immigrant. I don't think right now, I think the policy, which is being encouraged by people like the Chamber of Commerce, is just let's let a lot of people here in this country, and if for every 100 people we get 75 good or 80 good and 20 or 25 bad, that's good enough. because our business needs the 75 or 80 or 85 good. My opinion is we should be going for 100% good, and one way of doing that is you cut off the illegal immigration, and insofar as we need more immigrants, we get them here legally through visas or other means.
I want to give you a chance. One of your colleagues passed away recently, Mike Ellis, Senator Mike Ellis. You served a number of years in the state legislature with Mike Ellis. Take a couple of seconds here to tell us what he meant to you.
He was so valuable because he was genuine, and there's such pressure in Washington and Madison to always go along and not buck the party line. Mike Ellis, and I think one thing I learned from him is it's so valuable up there to have somebody who will stand up to leadership, buck the party line, and stand up for the average guy, and that's Mike Ellis's legacy. He looked out for the average guy.
Republican Senator Glenn Grothman, who is running for re-election this fall. It's good to have you back on the program. Thanks very much for being with
on the
us.
show.
You bet. Russian hackers apparently targeted Wisconsin voters in 2016. Coming up next on Upfront, we'll look at what's being done to keep our election secure in 2018.
Upfront with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.